You didn't lose people suddenly. You just stopped bleeding for them. And that changed everything. After years of emotional chaos and uneven connections. It isn't the stillness of being physically alone or sitting in an empty space. It's the quiet of a phone you no longer feel compelled to check every few minutes. Group chats remain unopened. Messages go unanswered without tension or guilt attached. Birthdays pass without noise, and you notice you don't actually miss the messages. This quiet didn't come from a single decision or a dramatic moment. You didn't wake up one day and decide to erase everyone from your life. It unfolded gradually through tiny moments that stacked up. One message stayed unanswered. One invitation felt too draining to accept. Over time, you stopped justifying yourself to people who never really heard you. You stopped investing energy in those who rarely returned it. What was left wasn't a void, but a surprising feeling of peace and lightness. First, you were already alone long before you stepped away. Even before creating distance, loneliness had been a steady inner presence. You could be surrounded by people and still feel invisible on an emotional level. You talked, replied, and stayed involved, yet nothing ever reached deep inside. Something meaningful was always absent. Being around others never automatically meant feeling understood or supported. You often felt like you were watching your relationships from the outside instead of living inside them. When you finally created space, it didn't generate loneliness. It simply exposed the loneliness that had quietly existed for years. Second, being busy became a form of protection. At the beginning, busyness sounded like a polite way to avoid difficult conversations. With time, it stopped being an excuse and became a real boundary. You realized you didn't owe explanations for your absence anymore. Saying sorry for guarding your energy began to feel pointless and draining. You noticed that explanations were often dismissed or misinterpreted anyway. Silence required less effort than repeating yourself to people who never paid attention. What others saw as withdrawal felt like self-respect to you. Third, you were always the one who showed up. For years, you were the person others leaned on during emotional lows. You remembered important dates, checked in consistently, and made space even when it wasn't convenient. When support was needed, you offered it freely, without keeping score. You became known as reliable, steady, and emotionally present. Eventually, this role turned into habit rather than choice. You rarely stopped to ask whether the effort was equal on both sides. Giving felt natural, even as it quietly emptied you. Fourth, when you needed support, no one appeared. At some point, you faced your own moment of collapse, exhaustion, or crisis that you couldn't carry alone. You reached out, believing someone would finally be there for you. Messages were seen but ignored, or replies arrived late and felt detached. Promises to call or check in faded without explanation. That was when you understood that support was conditional, temporary, or simply absent when it mattered most. In that moment, you saw how alone you had always been beneath constant interaction. Fifth, relationships turned into an emotional calculation. After being let down repeatedly, you began measuring connections by their emotional cost versus what they actually gave back. You started noticing how much energy each interaction demanded. Once you stopped making excuses, the imbalance became undeniable. You saw how often you were giving from nothing into people who were never depleted. What once felt generous now felt exhausting and impossible to sustain. The equation no longer worked, so you closed unlimited access. Sixth, people noticed your absence, not your reasons. When you pulled back, the shift was noticed almost immediately. Messages slowed, invitations stopped, and you slowly disappeared from their routines. What caught their attention was your change in availability, not the cause behind it. You were described as distant or different without any real curiosity. They missed the version of you who always agreed and showed up. No one asked what it took to keep being that person. Your distance felt like a personal offense because it interrupted what they received from you. Seventh, your nervous system recognized the pattern. Long before your thoughts caught up, your body understood what was happening. Each time you trusted fully, the ending followed a familiar, painful script that felt emotionally inevitable. People stayed close when everything felt light, then vanished once things became difficult. Your body learned to expect abandonment before it actually happened. Connection slowly stopped feeling safe and began to feel threatening instead of supportive. Trust started to feel costly, dangerous, and rarely worth what it demanded emotionally. This wasn't negativity or cynicism, it was lived experience stored deep in your nervous system. 8. Leaving first hurts less than being left. After enough painful endings, you discovered that initiating distance causes less pain than waiting to be abandoned. Leaving first offers a sense of control when outcomes have always felt uncertain. You choose the moment instead of bracing for disappointment to arrive without warning. This decision feels protective, not dramatic or impulsive. Others may label it self-sabotage, but internally it feels like survival. You are not trying to hurt anyone. You are trying to prevent a wound you know too well. Control becomes the only part of relationships you can depend on. Healing doesn't need an audience, but it deserves a space. If this spoke to you,